Folks, we are going to be doing a video today on a champion that I've actually, surprisingly, never really talked about on the channel, never really done any content about, so we're going to go ahead and hop into it. As you can probably tell by the thumbnail, the champion we are talking about is going to be Ramantu Drakesblood, who is the champion you get by completing these Ramantu missions here. So once you've gone through the Arbiter missions, you then get on to the Ramantu, and then from there you then progress to the Marius missions, where everybody seems to be currently stuck. So let's go ahead and let's talk about this absolutely fantastic guy that's been put in a lot of people's vaults due to the introduction of polymorph. First of all, I think this champion looks absolutely badass. He's got this kind of like very cool lizard look to it, but he's also got almost kind of like a modern, like not really like a mech, but maybe some sort of like a machine vibe to it, right? Especially with his hair coming out the back. I'm sure it's supposed to be hair, but it almost looks more like, you know, like wires or cables or something like that, which is very cool. He's got a very wide set of wings, which is absolutely fantastic. This guy just looks incredible. Not to mention his mouth slash teeth and whatever he's got going on there. It looks just sensational. They went all out with the character design on this guy. That is for certain. He still has very good ratings, but like I mentioned, he certainly has been power crept or outdone a little bit by the introduction of polymorph. We're still going to talk about him today, though, and see how we can use him and what sort of a champion he is. He has an A1 Psychic Overload, attacks one enemy, 100% chance of increasing the cooldown of one of the target skills at random by one turn, has a 50% chance of placing a stun on the target for one turn if a skill has its cooldown increased to the max. I'm not going to lie, I didn't remember that part of his kit. If the cooldown increase is successful, will also decrease the cooldown of one random skill by one turn of the ally with the highest turn meter and a skill on cooldown. So there's obviously a lot going on with this skill. First of all, you're increasing their cooldowns, you're then decreasing an ally's cooldowns, you're placing a stun on the enemy, all those sorts of good things, right? All in one on an A1. This is absolutely fantastic. We do also have a 3.2 times attack multiplier on the A1, which is certainly not too crazy, but it's definitely not nothing either. So we have Drake's Fury A2, attacks one enemy 4 times the first hit, and this will book to 100% chance of placing. So the first hit has a 100% chance of decreased defense, second hit 100% chance of weaken, third hit 100% chance of decreased speed, fourth hit 100% chance of block buffs. Now, he's also going to have a 100% chance of placing a True Fear on everybody if the target has 4 or more debuffs after the attack. Now, part of what really helped to power creep this guy as well was the introduction of UDK. So UDK, of course, is going to eat that first hit, and if UDK is inside a Stone Skin build or immunity or resistance or anything like that, of course, this guy is not going to place those 4 debuffs from this skill, so he's not going to get that AoE True Fear. Not to mention, this is basically just 5 individual chances to get polymorphed, right, which is absolutely insane. Now, this has a 1.8 times attack multiplier, which means that we are getting, what, about a 7.6 times attack multiplier on this, which is absolutely insane. That definitely puts this skill into the godlike category according to the Hell Hades website, which is very cool. Finally, Blood Wings, AoE, 100% chance of removing all buffs before attacking. Also, 100% chance of placing a block active skills for 2 turns on enemies without passives, and 100% chance of placing a block passives on enemies with passives. So if we think about Harima, Taurus, Marichka, those sorts of champions, right? Even something like your Mythicals, for example. He's going to be placing the block active or passive skills. I don't actually think there's any Mythicals that don't have passive skills. I might be wrong on that, but if there is, he's essentially going to go ahead and place that block active skills anyways, which is going to stop them from metamorphing into their second form. And for most mythical champions, the secondary form is essentially where they're the strongest, right? So still an incredibly strong champion. And now this does also have a 5 times attack multiplier, which is pretty incredible for an AoE skill. Finally, we have the Arrogance passive that whenever an enemy places a stun, sleep, freeze, fear, true fear, or provoke on this champion, he instantly fills his turn meter and places an increased speed and a shield for 2 turns. The shield is equal to 30% of this champion's max HP. Now, interestingly, he doesn't remove the debuff, he just fills his turn meter and places an increased speed as well as a shield, which is kind of interesting. So he makes himself a little bit harder to CC, of course, right? So if you're going against, say, for example, like a Tormin, or if you're going against a UDK that's placed into like a Frostbite or a Frost Freeze set, rather, like mine is, right? So very, very useful in those situations. And finally, he does have an ally accuracy in all battles by 80, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, we did have a few things come out that certainly help this champion. So first of all, we now have the pinpoint gear set, where essentially you can build your champion out. A 4-piece set is going to give you 1 stack of immunity to polymorph, essentially. And then, of course, if you have a 9-piece set, if you're lucky enough to have that, you're going to have basically full immunity to the entire enemy team for at least 1 go of your turn, so you can get his A3 out. And then, of course, we do also have the Feral set, where he's going to have a 50% chance to prevent the placement of sheep debuffs by the polymorph. So this will certainly be useful in longer battles, certainly. Now, in terms of blessings, I do actually have him built inside temporal chains, so he's decreasing enemy speed by 2% for each active buff up to 6%. There's a few other blessings you can run him in. As always, due to the debuffs he's placing, you can use Nature's Wrath. He is hitting champions a lot as well, so Cruelty would be a very solid way to go. And then, of course, if you do have him high awakened and you don't have somebody doing it already, Intimidating Presence would be very solid to help your Arbiter's speed aura inside the arena. With all these things in consideration, how do we have him built? These are how the stats are looking here. So 52k on the HP, 3,400 attack, 2,700 defense, 328 on the speed. Certainly not my fastest champion by any means, but he's going to be fast enough to get the job done, hopefully today. And then we have 339 on the accuracy there as well, which is pretty nice. Now, he does have probably like tier 3 or tier 4 gear for me, so you can see not even all of this is, you know, speed gear, right? He has just some weird mix match stuff thrown in here, so he's not a champion that I use a lot these days, so just keep that in mind, right? We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna go into Dragon 20 and just see what he is capable of. We're not necessarily doing a damage test here because, of course, this champion is not built to be a damage dealer. We don't have full crit rate, we don't have crit damage, all that sort of good stuff. So we're more so just essentially going to see what he's able to do with his skills. Let's go ahead and bring the Arbiter here in. We'll turn off the super battles just because I don't want to waste too much energy. And let's go ahead and see what he can do here. So we'll show you his kit in a little bit more depth in game. Now, if you're still progressing to get this champion, even though he has been power crept a little bit, I would certainly recommend still going for him. Don't get demotivated by that. You're going to need to get him to actually progress to getting Marius anyways, so I do definitely recommend progressing through those quests. Now let's go ahead, let's do the A2 onto the Tyrell there. Now, as you can see, he did only place 2 of those debuffs. He still did get the AoE True Fear, though, because we had enough debuffs placed by the rest of the champions on the team, which is interesting, though. So he didn't place... What is this on the A2? He has the Weaken, which was already on there, so that technically doesn't count. He did place the block buffs. He didn't place the defense down, I believe is what was not placed. And then, of course, we do come in AoE, block active skills on everybody unless they have a passive, in which case it's a block passive skills. So fairly simple kit, all things considered, but he certainly can shake things up and spice it up for you a little bit inside the arena, of course. We're going to go ahead and we're going to run him in some speed teams here and see what he's capable of. Now, I've mentioned this before, but there are going to be some cuts in the video because I am still battling for my life against this pesky cough that does not want to go away. So, you know, if there's chops, that would be why, essentially. Additionally, I don't like doing this, but I am pushing hard recently here in my last few videos, asking for subscribers. I'm basically doing the whole, please, can I have some more thing? I'm hoping to get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We're already almost at 1,700 subscribers, and we have 2 more months almost to go, right? So we're just at the start of November here. I am fairly confident that we can hit it by the end of the year, and absolutely thank you guys all so much for the support that you've given this year so far on the channel. It means the world, that is for sure. As you can see, we have the block active skills here on them, and then we do also have the block passive skills on Rhonda as well. Keep in mind, there are some champions in this meta where those particular debuffs are going to be super effective, right? So, for example, if you're going against a Sun Wukong and you place a block passive skills and then you kill him, you're not going to have to worry about him reviving. And in fact, I'll see if I can show that off here for you. So if we go ahead and excuse me, and if we take out that Sun Wukong, we don't need to worry about him coming back. Additionally, a champion like a Hefrak, we don't have to worry about him doing his AoE if he has the block passive skills, right? So there's so much use you can get out of this guy. We also now don't have to worry about Cardinal doing her revive because she's block active skills. Now, we are going to go ahead and probably just wipe them out here so we don't necessarily show the fact that the Sun Wukong is not going to come back. But I think that you're probably smart enough to be able to put 2 and 2 together. I am curious about going against a team like this as well. They don't have any sort of speed really or anything like that, so we're essentially just going to go ahead and see what we're capable of here. We are, of course, going to get burnt by the Gizmak there, which is a bit of a shame. We're going to take some damage, obviously, as the turns progress here. But let's still go ahead and see what we can do. So we'll go ahead and hope that we get the strip there as well, which we don't actually, which is a bit of a shame. We're still going to go ahead and boom, nuke them all down, though the Eric's, I think her name is, does unfortunately get an unkillable proc there. They have her built out in Swift Parry, I guess, for one reason or another. We're going to go ahead and essentially just do our A2 on her here. We get the True Fear out there as well because of it, and that will end the fight right there. Now, this particular team I don't think was incredibly strong. Yeah, it's a level 82 player, 4.29 million player power. I'm kind of bullying people at this point, I guess, but you know what? At the end of the day, if that's your defense and you're flexing these mythical champions that you have, as well as the High Awakening for a legendary, I'm going to attack you inside the arena. It's as simple as that. Now, we could also try a team a little bit more like this, and hopefully we do actually go first here so that we can kind of showcase what is going to happen. Now, keep in mind that Ramantu certainly is not a substitution in most cases for a straight lockout champion. The reason for that being is, so for example, with Sun Wukong, he does have that passive where he's going to be reviving himself. Now, Ramantu, when he does his AoE, he's going to place the block passive skills, but that doesn't do anything to block out the Sun Wukong's, actual skills. So his A2 and his A3, right? The stuff that you should be worried about. So Ramantu works particularly well if you're able to run him in combination with somebody who has a block skills. So for example, Crixia, or if you think about like Warlord, Yumiko, Basher, Alika, I think it is, that does it from the Barbarians as well. Those sorts of champions, right? It is super strong. Running him in tandem with somebody like an Armands is quite good as well, especially if the Armands goes before, or rather after the Ramantu, so that he can essentially go ahead and place his debuff, steal his turn meter, all that sort of good stuff. One thing I forgot to show as well is actually going to be his masteries. So if anybody's curious, these are the masteries I haven't built out with. Counterattack masteries for obvious reasons, and then we do come down to Eagle Eye to get that additional accuracy, and I do have Evil Eye to go ahead and get the decreased turn meter on any sort of A1 attacks that we might be throwing out there as well. Let's go ahead and hit a refresh here and see if there's some other teams that we can try and take out. Something like this team right here mightn't be bad. I don't know how well my speed team is going to do against it, though. We're not particularly survivable. Granted, this team appears to be incredibly slow. Oddly enough, I don't know how or why players would have, these champions and then just have no speed on them. Perhaps it's somebody just starting at the game. I don't know. I'm not really... who am I to judge when I walk the earth as an imperfect man, right? So there we go. We take everybody out. Now, unfortunately, the Siegfried is essentially just going to go ahead and absolutely demolish us because he's the most broken champion in the game, unfortunately. But you can really see the use there where he placed that block passive skills on the Leorius, and then we were actually able to kill that Leorius without having to worry about him proccing his passive where he's essentially just going to stay alive, right? So let's do that on another battle like this as well. So usually Enithui would essentially, so this champion here would essentially just go ahead and block revive whenever he kills somebody, but we can essentially stop that from happening with the block passive skills, which will allow our Sun Wukong to come back should he get killed. And then on top of that, the Skull Crown here does usually place an unkillable on herself, very similar to somebody like a Leorius, right, whenever she were to get killed. But as you'll see here right away, boom, she doesn't get that unkillable. We're essentially just good to go ahead and progress through the fight. Absolutely fantastic. Can work very, very well against any sort of champions that have passive or active skills, right? And it's very solid against champions even that don't have passive skills, because if you think about it, a block active skills is essentially just the debuff version of a cooldown increasing effect. So what I mean by that is when you increase somebody's cooldowns for 2 turns, or when you place a block active skills for 2 turns, the effect is the same. They can't use any of their skills for 2 turns. It's actually a little bit stronger to have the block active skills against mythical champions, because that does block their metamorph into the second form as well. The one thing to keep in mind, though, is that of course you can be polymorphed from it, right? So just a little bit of food for thought there as well. Excuse me. Let's go ahead and try against this team here as well. Now today, we seem to be having good luck where we are actually faster than most of the teams that we're fighting, which is quite nice. I know when I was doing some of my showcases last week, that was not the case, and it got a little bit frustrating. So that's certainly good to see. Now, I should also be speed tuned enough so that they don't cut in. Now, with this, of course, Leorius would usually get his unkillable and all those sorts of crazy things, but that simply does not happen here, so we are good to go. I hope this really helped to showcase some of the strength that you're going to get from Ramantu. Arena is certainly not the only place you can use him. You can also use him in City of Centranos, Tag Team Arena, and certainly Live Arena. Just keep in mind, if you're going against somebody who can turn you into a sheep, you're kind of a magnet for it with the amount of debuffs he's placing. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and as always, see you in the next video.